So last time we had started discussion on client server architecture. So initially, as we saw that DBMS software was installed on centralized architecture. That means only one PC combined both the client as well as the server software. Uh, so, but later, as the demand on, or you can say, as the complexities of this database management system was increased, then this client server architecture came into picture. And in this, there were two types basically: two-tier client server and then three-tier client server. So, what do you mean by uh, two-tier client server? That we'll see. So two-tier client server means when there is like client at one end and servers at other end. And in case of servers, again, the distribution of work may be based on specialization. Like there could be one PC dedicated specially to serve the file service related operations. Then one server can be dedicated to handle print related services. Another server may be dedicated for web related services, email servers, etc. So here you can see this is two-tier client server architecture wherein clients are at one end, then the which may be connected through network, and the servers are at the other end. There is a DBMS server, file server, and print server, etc. So this is a logical diagram, and physically the connection may be like this. Just a minute. Yeah. So here you can see the clients are two, and then there are servers are two, which are communicated via communication network. So this server could be a PC. Here two types of servers are shown, and even the two types of clients are shown. First client is diskless client. That means only client software is there installed, but it doesn't have its own storage capacity. So there is no disk here. It has only processing capacity, whereas when it tries to save, it goes to the server. The information doesn't get stored at the client at all. Fine. Then the second type of client is client with a disk. Here, let me just mark. So this is the second type of client, is a client with disk. The disk is shown, or the database is normally shown in the cylindrical shape. So this client is with storage capacity, its own storage capacity. But finally, whenever the data is stored, so then it goes to the server itself. So the database is normally stored at the server. Then third is like at the third side, there may be a server. So here this server is purely a server. There is no client software in that. It just services the request of the client which are connected remotely through other client machines. The fourth one is a typical PC which may have both the software is installed, client as well as the server software. That means that PC can act as a client as well as it can act as a server. So this is how different types of clients and servers can be connected in this two-tier client server architecture. Two-tier indicates two ends. One end is client and the second end is server. There is no mediator in between. Fine, let's move to the next. Yeah. So how is this two-tier client server architecture recognized? So here user interface programs and the application program runs on the client side, and whereas the database is located at the server side. There is an interface called as ODBC. Now ODBC is a standard. There are various standards uh, which are there in the market. The most frequently used was ODBC earlier. Then for specialized languages, there are specialized connectivity software. Like for Java, we have Java database connectivity, which is called as JDBC. So similarly for SQL Server and all, we have different database connectivity specialized software. But for some old databases and some commonly used in front ends, there is a common connectivity software which is called as open database connectivity. That's why it is called as open. Why? Because it is open for some backends and some front ends. But when the backends and front ends got specialized, then we have specialized connectivity software for them like JDBC. Now, interface normally, interface provides application program interface. It allows client-side programs to call the DBMS. DBMS vendors provide ODBC driver. That means this particular ODBC, it connects the client to the database PC. I can show you through diagrams here. Diagrams in the sense, some sample diagrams. Yeah, suppose client PC is here and the server is here. You can see on this client PC, there is a software which is used for preparing your GUI, that is user interface. Then there are some kind of application programs also. They are installed there or they run for validation. And then when the data is validated, it will go and get stored on the server PC. So server PC has only the databases stored. And for connecting this client to the server, both these client PC and the server PC follow some common standard. As you are learning, I think in your data communication and advanced networks subject, there is something called as a protocol. So protocols are the rules which have to be obeyed by both the PCs which want to communicate in the network, right? So such kind of protocols, they become standards when they are specialized for backends and frontends. And these standards are stored under this open ODBC and JDBC, the various connectivity standards which are provided and which are followed by a particular backend and frontend. So most of the database management system vendors, they come packaged with these drivers. It is something like when the backend comes, the backend should provide connectivity via ODBC also, via JDBC also. There are again different standards. Fine. So all these should be provided by database management system. So they should support all kinds of clients. So just a minute, let me clear this part. Okay. So a client program may connect to several DBMS, as I told you. Other variations of clients are possible, like in some DBMS, more functionality is transferred to the clients, including data dictionary functions, optimization and recovery across multiple servers, etc. In such situation, the server may be called the data server. Here, more details are provided, like there could be, in case of client server architecture, especially in 2-tier, just a minute, the client machines, either even when they are diskless or when they are not with application programs. So like for example here, all your user interface, the interface with which the user deals with, they lie at the client PC. Whenever the user has to request for some data, he will talk to the client PC. Now this client PC, whenever, or suppose when the data has to be inserted, it will be inserted through the client PC. Now the data backend will have the validations or the constraints installed, but still, uh, to avoid, you can say, the overload on the server PCs, because the clients may be many in number, whereas and all of them might be connected to one server. It is something like this, as we have seen in case of your Gmail. Clients are so many, but the server is there with Gmail, or that particular firm which handles Gmails. So clients are innumerable in number. All these clients will be interacting with the same server. So if you provide every data validation functions, or because the server has to do so many things, it has to store your data at appropriate location, bifurcate it and store it, and then the data validation, because while storing, it has to validate that data. If you hand over entire responsibility on the server, then the server gets overloaded and it cannot handle that overhead, or that particular load causes, you can say, impact on the query processing. The servers get slow. That's why you see that most of the many of the times the servers are down. In case of banks and all, you will see, you will get those messages that the server is down, you will not be able to process, we will not be able to process your request during that time. So because of this reason, slowly the inventions, or you can say the enhancements, were made to the client PC to share some of the load of the server on the client. So that's why there were two kinds of validations that are normally provided. Validations means the filtration of the invalid data. Earlier, entire validation used to happen at the backend itself. This is called a server-side validation. But then slowly now you can see in the recent applications, the validations not only occur at the server side, but to some extent the validation also occurs at the client side. And the programs are written like that, that whenever the client has to be installed, or it has to get communicated, some kind of what you can say, validation responsibility even the client should have. So for example, I'll tell you, when you provide your username and password, whether you have provided correct username for the correct password, I mean, whether that pairing of the information is correct, that will be checked by the server, because your data, that is username and password, is stored at the backend. So only when you pass this username and password at the backend, when it reaches the server PC, then only that thing gets validated, whether your password is connected to the proper username or no. So that is done at the server side. But at the client side, some kind of validations, like when you don't enter any username and password, blank entry, instead of burdening the server to check even the blank entry, it is better to check at the client side that the entry is must, or whenever some, you can say, uh, yeah, some kind of validations, like whenever some particular formats you want to accept the data in, particularly in case of forms and all. In login, of course, you can you cannot have much examples other than blank entry and the correct pairing. But in case of whenever you are filling the information like entire form, or then there could be many instances by which some kind of validation has to happen at the client side. So this is called as client side validation. That's why here you can see that some of the clients may be specialized to share the load of the server, what all functionality load it can have. One is validation. The other functionalities, like it can have some query optimization and recovery. Install data dictionary functions also the clients can handle, etc. So whenever the connectivity is established, server passes some information to the client, and the client checks that with that information, client automatically shares the load of the server. So this may happen. And in such case, when other activities are handled by the client and server handles only the data related services, then in such case, the server can be called a data server. Now, later on, as the web applications got popular, now you can see all the applications are web applications only. Earlier, the applications, the kind of projects also for the students we used to handle, they used to be only standalone applications, like some billing system is there or some, normally it used to be billing system only. It used to be standalone application, whereas web services were not required. But now you can see that all the application, may it be shopping, it is all internet based, isn't it? Even the education is internet based nowadays. You give your attendance and it reaches us. So this three-tier architecture was required when web applications became popular. Why this three-tier? That means which is the third tier which came into picture in between this client and server. In case of client and server, now you people are the client who request for the information, and we may be the servers in this particular education thing, that you are referring to the data which is stored here, the PPTs or maybe the notes, etc. Now, whenever you are requesting for some data, your request in case of web applications, okay, some of you might have connected through laptop, some of you might have connected through tabs, or some of you might be through mobile phones. So when the clients are various, and then your phone's architecture may be different, your laptop's architecture may be different. When this, or maybe you are watching through different browsers. You know, browsers are required for connecting. So you may be using different browsers. So when the request comes from the client, it may come through various browsers, various PCs, various operating system. So when such requests come through the internet to the server, they may have their own formats, and the server may have its own format. So when the request comes in one format, it reaches the server. The server should have capability to understand all these kinds of requests. When the server, then what happens, you can imagine that there are hundreds of clients and the request is coming in 100 different formats. The server will get busy in translating those requests, or sometimes the server may not understand the format of the request which is coming from the client. So in case of these internet based application, the third tier was installed. Of course, it is not physical, it is logical. But of course, the physical may be through cabling and all. So what happens, the third tier, which lie in between these two tiers. I'll show you this with the annotations. So as we saw in the earlier case, there were two ends. One is client and the server end. Whatever request the client gave, it reached the server, and server processed those requests through some standards like ODBC and JDBC, etc. When the applications got internet based, then there were so many, like whenever the request had to be passed between to and fro between the client and server, there were many, you can say, data translation were required. And also you can say, whenever the data was sent through the server, again the client's format in which the data was required, it varied from one client to another. So what happened is, every client, whenever it passed the request, that request was passed through one translator. It is something like, when imagine that when the server understands only one language and clients are speaking through other languages, each of the client may be associated with one translator who translates their requests from their language to the client server understandable language. And when the server gives information, that information will be again retranslated into the format which is understandable to the client. So this translation, or sometimes when the data is flooded to the server, too many requests are given to the server at a time, this web server also does, you can say, queuing activity or pooling activity. It stores the request and then it gives it to the server in some common speed. So this web server actually stores the web connectivity software and the rules And the business logic in the sense constraints, rules. To access right amount of data from the database server, it acts like a conduit for sending partially processed data between the database server and the client. Partially processed in the sense whatever required data conversion that is required. Like for example, client has sent the data, but it may not be directly understandable to the server. So this web server may do the required translation or transformation between the request, and then that translated request may be sent to the server. So this web server, it acts as an intermediary between the client and the server. So this is how web servers are required for internet-based activity, and that's why such system, which is made up of these two servers and the client involved, this is called a three-tier client-server architecture. This is again exam point of view, frequently asked question. They will ask you client-server architecture. So what you have to explain here? You have to explain what is client's job, what is server's job, and what is the web server. Web server is the intermediary server that lies between the client and the server PC.
Ma'am?
Yes?
Ma'am, what's the difference between 3-tier and 2-tier client server? The only difference I got here was that they use ODBC there and web server here.
Yes. That is what. Here you can say that basically in case of internet based applications, you require a lot of translation between the request, because clients are of various kinds. In case of normal client, two-tier client server architecture, they were again the simple who were connected through physical LAN, or the variety of clients was not much as compared to this internet-based application. When the variety of clients got increased and their requests were in various formats, then there was this translator required, which is called as web server. There, like server and client both had to, in case of ODBC, both have to understand, or you can say follow the protocols, common protocols like ODBC or JDBC, etc. In case of this 3-tier, what happens? These translations are automatically done through web server. Fine. So that is the only difference. Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Yeah. Then sometimes web server also do the additional functionality of encrypting the data. One sec. Yeah. Encrypting and decrypting the data. Whenever the data travels from client to server, some sensitive data has to be encrypted. Of course, the encryption most of the times it may happen at the client side only, but also the web server also may take care of this activity, that the data is encrypted. Sensitive data is normally not sent as it is, like your passwords and all. They will be automatically encrypted, and whenever again it has to be accessed by the client, it will be decrypted at the client. So this encryption and decryption or some security features are also handled by the web server. Yeah. Then there is final section here, classification of DBMS, how the database management systems are classified. Not much important as, I mean, if you consider exam point of view, the data, based on the data models, there are two classifications. One is traditional and second is emerging. Traditional means the old ones, emerging are the new ones. Traditional were the relational, network, hierarchical, object. Of course, relational is still into, in popularity, whereas network and hierarchical models are out of date now because of their complexity. Emerging data models are object relational. That means object oriented storage structures are implemented or embedded in relational. So they are called as object relational, then XML, DBMSs, etc. Other classifications are single user and multi-user. Of course, single user is again standalone applications. So here, most of the database management systems are multi-user because this is the specialty of database management system. We have also seen in one section that if there is no requirement of multiple users and multiple levels of views, then better not go for DBMS. Then better stick to the simple either spreadsheets or simple storage. Then the other classifications, general purpose and special purpose. General purpose means these databases like, for example, okay, credit card validation. There are third party applications like, I'm just giving you software explanation example here, not exactly the database management system. But general purpose means some database management system may be prepared for general use and some are special purpose. Like for example, if some database is prepared for only Gokte College of Commerce, then these are called as special purpose, and general purpose may be for all university and all colleges, some common format. Like in our library management system in Gokte College, or in fact the Karnataka University or RCU, I'm not sure exactly, but they themselves have given their library management software, which is called as eGranthalaya. So eGranthalaya, you can consider it to be a general purpose database management system, specially designed. In fact, it is called as application, specially designed, which is given to different colleges. Of course, the examples what I'm giving, they are not of DBMS, they are the application examples. But in case of database management system also, some database management systems are specially prepared. Of course, we have less examples here. Normally, Oracle, Access, all these database management systems are general purpose only. They are not specialized, prepared for any. There may be some scientific applications for which specialized DBMSs are prepared. Then in case of usage, how the installation takes place between the client and server, there may be centralized where single computer with database and the client is there. Distributed means it may be, the database may be installed on multiple PCs. Like take the example of Gmail itself. Where Gmail, there are so many users, innumerable users are there. One PC handling the storage is literally impossible. So nowadays you will have cluster of these machines, chains of these machines wherein the information will be distributed. Many of your seniors had done a project on this only. Now how this data is handled, it's a part of data mining, of course. That is how based on, like, there are different algorithms which handle this data retrieval between various pieces. Like I can just give you an idea through annotations here. Like just now we saw that there is one client and one server. But now suppose when there are n number of clients and the data has to be stored on the server, one server is not capable, or the data efficiency may go down in case of if one server has to handle all this. Then the data is distributed over multiple PCs. In case of distribution, now the algorithm has to be created based which actually stores the information of which server holds what part of the information. Because when the request will come, there should be one person who will know where. It is something like when you have multiple cupboards, your brain should have that kind of memory where which book is kept. Suppose you have kept your all study material in various sections in your cupboard, then you should remember which book is kept in which section, or at least you should have that labeling done by which you can easily remember. Similarly, in case of these databases, that labeling may not work. but there could be some programs through which this distribution is handled. Nowadays, when the data is such huge, all these data warehousing techniques, like they follow some algorithms here, which automatically stores the data and retrieves the data when there could be hundreds of servers, and from the hundreds of servers, when one request comes, that may require a diverse kind of information, which is stored. Some part is stored in one server, another part is stored in another server, which will be retrieved automatically between from the various servers. So this is called as distributed architecture. Centralized is entire data is stored at one location only, a single computer which stores the database. So this backend itself, it could be either a single PC or multiple PCs. When they are multiple, it is called as distributed. So these are various categories by which your databases, or you can say DBMS software, are categorized. So this is a small section which is at the end. Yeah, there is one more category called as homogeneous and heterogeneous. In case of distributed, again, there could be different, like whether all the servers use the same database management software, or one uses SQL Server, another uses Access, another uses MySQL, etc. So depend if it is if all the servers follow the same database management software, it is called as homogeneous. When there are various database management system, then it is called as when different database management softwares are there on different servers, it is called as heterogeneous. So that was the end of the second chapter. We'll stop here. All of you give your attendance. Before we proceed with the next, I just recommend everyone to go with the installation. We need to cover practicals parallelly now. Yeah, once you give your attendance, you can log off.